Hello guys and welcome to another episode of How to Go Pro. This week on the show we have Julian, the owner of Obey.
Hello.
Hi. Julian is, as I mentioned, the owner of Obey. I've worked with him for a year now, and Julian is one of the, in my opinion, the most well-intended people I've ever been around for sponsors. And the organization Obey was really fun, really great org to be under. So I wanted to bring different perspectives into this series. Right now we've talked with Dee and Brandon. Now we've talked with Jeff Hindler. Let's try and get the organizations and what does the org want from players, like in terms of going pro. What's the different criteria, etc. How to go pro is this vodcast thing where we sit down every Friday and we talk about what it takes to go pro, basically, and we have the different perspectives. And this time it's Julian, the owner of Obey. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing really good. I'm excited to be on here. I think that you're doing great for the community and great for future pro players and establishing how you can really get to the level you have achieved. And I think that it's something that lacks in esports is the ability for players that are aspiring to be pro players to really understand how to get there. So it's awesome that you do this. It's a really great concept.
Oh yeah, thank you. I wanted to mention quickly before we start here that Julian and Obey and all the organizations in SPL this year has a bit more power. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing personally, but we'll see them for the whole year, at least for 1 year now, right? And that also means that organizations are the ones that's gonna be looking to, like, they have the final say on players. They have the final say on everything. So as a player myself, it's super important that you have a healthy relationship with your sponsors. I've been on teams where we didn't have that. I've been on teams Obey where we had that, and it honestly impacts the game a lot and your whole pro career. So I'm really glad to have you on. Now, starting here, Julian, what's your story? How does one go from being, I don't know, a little kid playing around to actually owning one of the biggest organizations in the world? Where did you start? When did you start playing?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how I got here. Because for me it's been relatively the same story, I guess, as yours. I was 10 years old when I started playing video games, and I started making videos on YouTube in 2010. Most of it was on Call of Duty. I loved Call of Duty. I was following the same like trick shotting and sniping trend. It was very big at the time. You know, that's where teams like FaZe and obviously the sniping side of Optic, where they grew their brand originally. And it was like the cream of the crop. Like, to get there was to be at the top, and obviously you see those guys now, they're clearly at the top still. So I did that for a long time. I was just making videos on YouTube, joining different trick shotting teams, and just being a player. I was never really good, that was for sure. Like, I would never really was that good at like trick shotting and sniping like some of these other guys were. So towards, I guess, 2012, I started to lead trick shotting teams. So basically my responsibility would be like to recruit players, to manage content on the channel, to put together like videos with the team and upload them. And I, that way, grew a couple of teams. I started to get known as like a leader, quote unquote. That's what the title is in the trick shotting community of these teams. And for a while, that's what I did. Nevertheless, I did quit a few times. I think trick shotting is the funniest community because a lot of people quit and come back within weeks, and I'm definitely one of those people. So yeah, it was different, and for a while that's what I did until life took me into a different area, and I went to med school, and then I ended up leaving med school because it just was not for me. And that's when the whole thing with Obey happened. I've always been relative in the trick shotting community. I've built quite a name for myself. So getting into Obey, I had a connection with my best friend, which is Marcus at the time, who became leader of it. This is was before we moved Obey into a business model or approached any type of business of Obey.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because Obey was huge at the time that I joined, but nothing happened business-wise with it. And that's crazy to think about. If you looked at our subscriber and YouTube count, you're thinking there's no company in place here. It's just, that's how we grew into it. You know, this wasn't something that anybody expected, right? We were all young as well. So I joined Obey as like a team captain / leader, and I worked my way up to leader with Marcus. And this was all before we moved into a business model, and we actually moved into a business model for Obey right before we picked up the Smite team. So at the time, it was me and Marcus leading it. However, after a few sponsors were gained, it was necessary that we established an LLC. We started acting appropriately because we seen esports. I mean, everybody has always been fascinated by esports in the gaming community. Just now is it attracting, popularity from the external community outside of gaming. But everybody in gaming that's been here for quite some time knew that this was going to happen, that it was going to get here. So just seeing like Optic play Call of Duty, you know, that was still happening at that time. It was very like, I want to get Obey there one day. And I never knew it was going to become my biggest passion at that time, but it was of interest to us. So we established the LLC, and at that time I was so prominent in the organization that, you know, it made only the most sense for me to be the owner. So it was just me and Marcus, so there was no type of lean back. It wasn't like a bad decision. You know, at the time I was the face of the organization. Marcus took a step back, so that's what it was.
Yeah, it's awesome. Crazy story. How old were you back in 2012 when you started Trickshot and became leader of like those teams?
Yeah, I was 15. Yeah, I think I was 15. Kind of old now, 21.
Oh yeah.
But no, yeah, I was 15, and it was interesting because it taught me a lot of things in life. I think I underestimated how much it impacted me because as much as it was really just a hobby, just being able to be that person for others at that young of an age, I think it added a level of maturity to myself. Because whilst it was just the trick shotting teams, some of these teams that I was helping and leading for actually had a great fan base behind them. So, you know, there was a level of responsibility that was expected for me, and having that level of responsibility at a young age, you know, it did help me going forward into college and other things. So,
so you talked a bit about it already. When like Obey, was that the Smite team? Was that your first team?
Yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah, I think that was back in August of 2016. I really wanted to get into Smite. I think that we had seen it do relatively well at the time. You know, it was appearing on my timeline, and at the same time, it was a great entry point for an org that's just getting started.
Yeah.
So we looked at Smite, and I remember the first team we talked to was Randazos at the time. And they were great people. And then I got in contact with Hindu. And we got on a call, and they were like, oh, there's some great European teams. Would you like to speak to them? And I was like, sure, why not? You know, the whole aspect of regionalism to me is, in terms of organizations go, I was relatively naive of it. So whether we were US based or not, I was ready to approach a European team. And that's when we got in a call with Nate and Prime and Twig and Variety. And I smile so much because I feel it's like one of my best decisions. I absolutely love those guys, as you know. So for me, it was like, it just was perfect. Like from the moment we talked, I felt like this was the team I wanted, and this is the team that I would do anything for, in terms of getting them onto the brand. So we got into Smite with them, and it's been a hell of a story so far. So
yeah, absolutely. Do you play Smite when you picked up the team, or did you picked it up before?
I played Smite before I picked up a Smite team.
Oh.
It was on console though. Like my friends would be like, oh, you know, you want to play Smite. It was never like But once I got a team, I definitely got more into it. You know, I take a lot of initiative to be involved with the games we have teams in, because I want myself to be relatable to my players. I don't want to just be like someone that they can come to and it's just business. Like, I want you to be able to say, oh, you know, Kibo's broken right now, you know,
yeah.
too tanky, you move around, I can't hit skill shots, you know. I'm always in the clan, I'm always talking to the guys, I'm always playing Smite, because like I said, I think it's important that people who run the organization when it comes to esports are relatable to the players in terms of building relationships. So
yeah, you already again mentioned this a bit. You said that there was this instant click when you saw the guys, when you sat down and you talked to them. What are you like really looking for in pro players? Is it just that click? Is it something you can explain, or is there like certain qualities?
I think that it's different for every organization. I think it's a really interesting question to ask, because it lands on the vision of the organization. For me, I think my biggest thing is passion. I am very passionate about Obey. Everybody involved with Obey is passionate about Obey. And the reason why I clicked with Nate and the team originally is because you can hear the passion and drive that comes from these players. And I can tell you, I've had a lot of meetings with teams, and you can hear when there is no passion there. And it is very, for me, as where my vision stands, I just not interested from the get-go. I'll obviously endure the conversation respectfully, but I know when I hear that that's no way, because in terms of building an identity with this team, I know that this team might not really be in it to build with Obey. It's more of a cash grab at that point, you know what I mean? And there are players like that, and that's all due to them. That's fine. However, I want people that want to build. I want people that want to be passionate about not only what they're doing in their life, but also being part of Obey. And when those things come together, I think when an organization shows support to a team and a team shows support to an organization, you build something super special. And that's something that's super undervalued when it comes to other organizations, where I feel like teams are always being picked up and dropped and picked up and dropped. I've always wanted to make sure that you establish identities with these teams you bring on. And I think when I look for pro players or anything like that, I want people that, like I said, passionate and driven. I think those are the two major words I can really correlate with that. So
yeah, well, I'm just sitting here like I'm agreeing honestly with everything you said. I had the same feeling. From my first-hand impression in NRG now, NRG is a lot of the same. From what I'm feeling just being with you and being with NRG now, both sponsors and organizations, they did super well. With actually, as you're saying, being passionate about the game, it means so much to the players. Well, that I know I can sit down and talk with the owner of Obey, Julian, and be like, yo, this didn't work out because he had that relic or whatever. Or I can say, yeah, we tried this strategy rather than this, and he said, oh yeah, okay, I get that. Also bringing you to Worlds as well, obviously you watched over there. Just sitting down and understanding the game, it means so much that you have so supportive organizations. So I would say for new players that are looking for orgs, you should definitely, if you get like asked to go into SPL, say yes. But you also got to get the feel, you know. If for myself at least, I only want to be with orgs that actually care about the game and are not just in it for the money, right? In it for the, okay, we're gonna get 200k by high-res or whatever, and then we're just kind of gonna leave them to themselves, give them the base salary or whatever. So again, to all you new players, that's totally fine if you are like that, but it actually helps so much behind the scenes as well if you have an organization that's there for you, that's supportive. Just a little piece of advice I'd like to give to you.
No, yeah, you're extremely right, and I think that's where players need the most information, is protecting themselves. I've always talked about this, but esports is still, in a sense, in its infancy, so a lot of players are still very inexperienced when it comes to contractual work, when it comes to any type of legal matter, and also when it comes to being able to perceive and see through deception when it comes to organizations. And you really, as a player, need to sit down and listen to what these organizations are saying to you, listen to what they're offering, but also be wary of who they are, you know, look into the people you're talking to, you know, look at how they've dealt with teams in the past. You know, I've talked to many players, and, you know, even the Smite team now is used as a reference. You know, I tell players that are coming onto Obey, hey, if you want to hear about past experiences of our players, you can go contact this player.
Yeah.
You really have to be taking the initiative, make sure you're getting the best team possible for you. And whether that be a team that's not relatively involved or a team that is involved, you need to make sure that you're getting what you need, because from my experience, what's most important as a player is to have that necessary backing that makes you comfortable, because it makes you want to play just all the much better when you have something you are happy to represent. It's not just a logo, you know, it's not just a name, it's something more than that. And you're reaching towards that for not only yourself, but like I said, the organization you're a part of. So
yeah, I wanted to mention as well that at the end of the day, everyone has to remember that all organizations are businesses. They need money to survive. And one of the big things you can do for an organization to make yourself very, how do you say it, attractable for an org is content. And talking about content, Julian, I know obviously you come from the content world, right? You're creating clips.
Yeah.
Obey is based on content. Obey is based on this trick shot community that you had. What can Smite players do to like make themselves more attractive, and what helps the sponsors the most that you guys have?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because coming into Smite in Season 5, you're going to be seeing players focus on this more. But something you've done very well, and, you know, a ton of other players in Smite have done very well, is building brands for themselves. We try to help as much as we can with this, but at the end of the day, it comes with the player's own initiative to really build themselves up as an individual that has a fan base behind them, right? It's one thing to be a competitive player, and if you want to be a competitive player and it's purely competitive, then that's on you, right? I'm not saying that's a bad thing. However, if you're able to balance that competitive aspect of yourself and also merge it with content and being able to upload on YouTube, stream on Twitch, and really grow a fan base that is behind you, that is extremely valuable. It is extremely valuable because the representation we have for our sponsors is no longer just coming from Obey's social channels and our content itself, but also your content as well. And that is marketable and that is valuable. Not a lot of players do that well. That's just reality. And as you see now, a lot of people are shifting because of requirements. So in some leagues, there is going to be requirements. I know in the Smite Pro League, there is requirements. On how the teams decide to work that out, if there's one person they know is going to help fulfill those requirements, then okay. But you should still be encouraged as a player to approach that sense of establishing your own brand, streaming YouTube. You know, it doesn't hurt. It only helps you, right? You can make more money. You can, you know, you can make yourself marketable for individual sponsorship. And for Obey and sponsors, what I've noticed is that not only is that important, but also being identifiable with the team you have. And I think that's the most important, because a sponsor wants to work with you, you want to make content, but you can't make content with a team that is not necessarily kind of linked with the organization in a sense where the fans recognize that team and they drive traction to that team. I think it's really interesting with Obey is that we came from Call of Duty, but I feel like we've done an insanely good job of transitioning our fan base, our core audience, into supporting our Smite team. And that's not something a lot of organizations succeed in because it's not necessarily done right, but we've tried to push content. I think something that helped a lot was the articles that I know you took part in. And yeah, I think identifiability with, I don't even know if that's a team, but being being identifiable with an organization is supremely important. And when it comes to content, obviously building your own brand, the YouTube, the Twitch, I think those are some of the biggest things where I wish I could just, I don't know, I try to drive it into every player, you know, but at the same time, I try to be respectful of it because you don't want to impede on someone's own vision, which might just be competitive play. So.
I wanted to add something here. Talking a bit about it myself. You're like, well, how do I get started with YouTube? How do I get started with streaming? Right? What's your best advice or something? I think for me, interaction is honestly the key. If that same person shows up and interaction and consistency, right? I think those are the two most important things when it comes to YouTube and Twitch. If you stream 5 days a week at the same time in the morning, you're gonna start seeing more and more of the same people show up. I show up and I put on my stream, I put on the "I'm going live soon" screen, and instantly I just see the same 10-15 people every day. And it's the same for my YouTube. I upload at the same time, and it's always the same people that are battling for the first comment, you know. I think getting a Discord is a really good thing as well. That's really the interaction side. Get a server, a text server, whatever, where people can even talk to you. They can write to you. They can write questions. They can interact with other people that have the same interest, which is supporting you as a player. In general, replying to people, like being aware when you're streaming, being aware of like replying to YouTube comments, that makes that person want to go back more and watch your content, and then just try and be as consistent as possible. And I felt it myself that I had built up my own fan base. Actually, sadly, when I left Obey, which, you know, happens. Yeah, we said let's not talk about that. But when I left Obey, everyone's like, let's remember, this is not an Obey fan server. Like, it's not an Obey Discord. This is an EmilZy Discord. We support you no matter what you do. Sure, Obey might still be your favorite team, or we might swap to NRG now, but you're still our favorite player. Being able to brand yourself like that honestly means so much, and it's something I think it takes a lot of hard work, but you can definitely do it, and you can still maintain a high competitive level. So that was my little thing. I'm gonna move on to you now, Jules. Moving back here, what do you think is the kind of shifting topic? What would your best advice be to aspiring pro players in Smite? Not when it comes to content, but just practice. How do organizations notice you?
Yeah, I think it's important that you take advice and see what's worked for other players, but also to just help yourself stand out. You know, go the extra mile. I think it all depends mostly on skill, obviously, but also on who you are as an individual. Make sure that you're well represented in the community that you operate in. You have a great reputation. You work well with the community, and being involved with everything that's going on with the SPL, even though you're not necessarily in it, is the huge first step. Because then we see that you're supportive towards the vision of not only the organization, but also the game, which is important to a lot of the organizations that are in the Smite Pro League right now. I have to really drive down the concept of maintaining who you are and being a strong individual in vision. You know, when an organization hears someone that has a strong vision for where someone wants to be and how they plan to accomplish it and how the organization can help get them there, it is extremely appealing. But even so, if you don't have everything figured out yet, just being honest and being transparent, which is something we try to preach the most here in communication, is transparency, is super important in organization relations. And becoming a pro player, I think that's super important, not only in aspects of organization, but team communication as well, being transparent about team play and things like that. So other than the obvious, building that brand for yourself, building that identifiable name in the Smite community that people can get behind you no matter what team you're on, like EmilZy said, you know, that's something that I think is the biggest advantage of building your own brand. Those people are always going to support you. Whether you're on NRG, Obey, Dig, whatever team it is, those guys will support you, and that's a beautiful thing. And I think it's interesting because as the gap between player and fan becomes farther, because esports started with LANs that were relatively approachable, you're easy to meet your favorite player, and now we're moving to stadiums, and now players are going through backdoor access, and now it's harder to meet those types of people. And being able to establish your brand, that someone that's a fan of you can really get to know you and know what you're about when they look up to you, is so valuable. You know, that's something that if you can provide, I think it's almost a passion project as well, because these people look up to you, and you know, that's a person, that's someone, you know, living that values you, and that's extremely valuable to me, at least, and I know to you. So if I could say that, you know, transparency and communication, you know, drive, vision, and obviously the obvious points we've talked about, which is content and building a brand for yourself. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we've talked about this whole content side. We've talked a bit about your story on eBay. Let's talk about the future. We have season 5 coming up. I believe it starts in like, so this is getting uploaded on the Friday, so like 10 days from when this video is up. SPL is gonna have its first game. The schedule is not announced yet. Can't say anything about who's gonna play. It's gonna be hype. It's gonna be some hype games. How do you like? First of all, are you excited for season 5?
Yes, it's gonna be awesome. I'm really interested to see how it works out, and I love the new Conquest map personally.
Oh yeah.
I think it was a great change for Smite. It was a great change of pace. And I've seen and been watching pro players interact on the new map, and it seems like pros seem to love the new map.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's good, because you want people to enjoy what they play, and you want there to be a sense of, I guess, a refreshing aspect, because in a sense, a lot of the pro players are in Smite right now have been playing for a long time. So yeah, I'm excited. I think it represents a lot of new opportunities, and I think I'm most excited for the fact that teams are really going to be putting their best foot forward in terms of entering Smite, and representing it properly and their players properly. I feel like every organization that's part of Smite right now is well represented, and I feel like they're going to do a great job in building, you know, like I said, team identities. You know, we've talked about this before this, but I think that's what fans should be most excited for. You know, you can plan on becoming a fan of, you know, so-and-so team, because you know that team's going to be together for the whole year. Exactly. And that's good for Smite, and it's good for viewership as well. Like I said, you know, when it comes to NRG's core roster, it comes to the Obey core roster, you know, when those teams play, it's the viewership of Smite goes up. When it comes to LG, you know, which is now Space Station in a sense, but when it came to LG playing against NRG and matchups like that, those are things that build Smite. And the reason why I feel like Smite hasn't flourished in viewership is because what I felt in the past was always changing organizations. I mean, one month a roster would be on a team, an organization, and the next month they're on another organization, and there's no identity being built. The fans start to be confused themselves. And I think that's something to be most excited about. You know, you can firmly get behind NRG and say, this is the team I'm supporting. These are the 5 guys and coach I'm behind. And I know I can be behind them till the end of this year. And same with every other organization on the SPL this season. So.
Yeah. I wanted to mention as well, I think one of the best changes that has caused a lot of I don't want to say hate, but like negativity towards it, was reducing the teams from 6 to 8. But as you're talking about, I think it's those changes that, okay, well, Obey is playing Burrito, but who's on Burrito now? Obey is playing Papis, but, well, Papis was kind of the same. But with reducing the team count, you're also reducing the talent mass, like, that can be in there. That means there's more talented players in the actual SPL, and those talented players are going to meet each other more often. There's going to become rivalries. Now, obviously, we have signed for years now, a year, so people are going to stick together, and I think we're going to see a lot more of a soccer, football approach, where, yeah, sure, one player might get swapped out, but it's not going to be these crazy mix matches, right? Like, most notably, I thought that everything was gonna change now, moving into season 5. But what we have seen yet? It's only been a support swap, right? I've swapped out the Raffer, and that's kind of it. There's no big changes. It's still the same rosters. It's still the same cores, and I think that's really good. But now we've talked about what's good about SPL. Is there any things about the SPL where you could see like improvements that had to be made? Is there anything you would want to like improve if you could?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we're starting with the number one thing that concerned me last year going into Smite, which was organization stability. as far as knowing that there's going to be properly represented organizations, SPL. I think now we're starting to approach the point where we have the foundation laid. How do we build upon it is the biggest question. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how Smite manages the stream. I think that in the past, it's been done good sometimes and been done well. I think Smite as a broadcasting esport is really fun to watch for me. I enjoy watching it more than League of Legends personally, and I'm a big fan of League. But I think we have to do a better job of capturing what is going on in the map. I think it has to be done better. I think it's a big point for me because in some points I feel, I've brought in people to events. I go to every Smite event and I usually try to bring someone new to approach them to the scene and show them what it's like. There's always the same question, what is really going on, and building that storyline for people that are maybe new to the stream, I think is going to be really important. Especially it's going to start with a fresh new map, and people are going to, even people that have been relatively aware of Smite are still going to be, especially now, this is a new map, this looks completely different. So I think that's something they need to approach differently in establishing not only what they've done well, which their commentators there are amazing. I love every single one of their commentators there. But also, the camera work and things like that. I've seen bickering here and there on Twitter, but there is reason for wanting it to be better. So I think if I could say one thing, I think that's something that needs to be worked on. But other than that, I feel like they're doing a good job, and you can see the effort that's being put in by Hi-Rez on and really trying to make this a great season for Smite. So as much as there were concerns coming into season 5, a lot of them have been pushed to the side because they've showed us their dedication and it showed us how ready they are to really make this great push for this season. So
absolutely. Well, I think we are lagging towards the end here. Is there anything you want to add? Is there any last advice, last piece of anything you think we haven't gone over that you want to add here in the end?
I'm not relatively sure. I think we've covered a lot of it. I think this is great. So there's nothing much more for me to add at this point. Unless you have other questions, I'm more to answer. No. I'm more than happy to answer.
I am through my preset here. I think we covered everything really well. I think it's been a really informing and interesting episode. And I think this was a whole other talk than I had with DM, that I had with Jeff. This is really getting to know the organizations. And again, we're gonna have other views on it. I'll be talking to ex-pro players. I'll also be talking to some of the casters at Hi-Rez. I'll be talking to the coaches as well. So there's not much else to say, Jules. Then thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. It was great talking to you. And for you guys at home, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and press the bell. We'll be back next Friday with a new person. And until next time, guys. Peace out.
Bye-bye.